And we're live, I hope.
We are live.
Okay, good. So I think I have to close because I want to how do I look at the chat without having echo from my
Just turn off the volume. Just mute the volume on the
yeah.
video.
Yeah, that's what I did. Okay. So tonight we're here with Lapis, aka the Effeminate Degenerate on Twitter and YouTube, a fellow lefty. And we're going to talk about several different leftisms. How are you doing tonight,
Oh,
Lapis?
I'm in a good mood. I've had a very good week. I came out in front of my school and it went very well. So just in general, I'm in a good mood, and I'm just I'm just a really great optimistic place. I'm kind of annoyed that YouTube has once again decided to, target like non-Nazi promoting videos with their blocking mechanisms instead of like actually going after like Black Pigeon Speaks or like any of the other huge alt-right channels on their platform. But what do you do?
Oh yeah, YouTube is really terrible. I mean, there's a lot of problems, not just with YouTube, but with things in general, going after the non-Nazis and letting the Nazis go free, right? Like
Yeah.
UK free speech stuff, or rather hate speech laws going after Count Dankula. But anyway,
Yeah.
hopefully that's kind of old news. So okay, let's start from the beginning. So how did you become a leftist?
So it's kind of an interesting story, actually. So my background is that I grew up in a family that's kind of like liberal, and but we also went to church, the United Church, which is kind of the most liberal church in Canada. And as when I was going to the church, I kind of picked up like a very strong sense of very Christian values. And then right next to my house is actually like a very fundamentalist church called the Church of Christ. And I made friends with a lot of people from there. And I also picked up a lot of those Christian values from them. And later on, as I grew up, I started to notice problems with inequality in the world, and this really frustrated me. And when I was looking through history, the only like group that seemed to be tackling it effectively was the Marxist-Leninists, communists. And so for about like 3 years, I became like very hardcore, like the USSR did nothing wrong. Lenin was a saint, defend the revolution in Vietnam, glorious People's Republic of Cuba, all that sort of thing. I was very deeply enamored with that version of leftism, but I still, on a weird level, still kept my social conservatism, and it was a very bizarre political mix. Um, then through conversations with some of my liberal friends, I began to like kind of lose a lot of that social conservatism. And especially as I stopped attending church as much, I also lost more and more of that social conservatism. And but through also through the internet, I also began to have conversations with people who had actually lived in these countries that I was defending as like glorious people states, and I began to realize that, hey, maybe not so much. Maybe modern day Vietnam is not a socialist paradise, and so I started to move away from that variant of uh, leftism, and more towards a kind of libertarian socialism. I also began to read lots of Noam Chomsky during this time, and he kind of put the final nail in the coffin of my Marxist-Leninism. And I just became like a pretty like libertarian socialist. I also started to read a lot of Marx, and so I describe my political beliefs as now um, due to my increasing conversations and just kind of learning about the world, I would describe myself as an intersectional feminist and also a socialist, of a libertarian socialist, if you will, advocating more for like people's ownership rather than state ownership.
Right, that's interesting. So you went straight from Christian values, from good Christian girl to tanky.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. Yeah, although the social conservatism, as weird as its theme, it didn't mesh as badly as Marxist Leninism as you might think. There was definitely a lot of Marxist Leninists who were open to that kind of social conservatism.
Yeah, it's kind of the red quadrant of the political compass, right? The
Yeah.
brocialists.
Yeah.
I see. So with me, it's funny because like I feel like everybody I talk to has had a right-wing phase. So
Yeah.
my thing was kind of weird as well because like when I was really young, around 12, I was like a Green Day fan and I was really into these kind of
Mhm.
anti-capitalist aesthetics, but I didn't really understand it as anti-capitalist, right? To me, it was just
Yeah.
edgy. Um, and then um, like when I was in high school, people started getting politically involved and sort of
Mm.
being liberals, basically. But I thought that wasn't very edgy. So I went full Sargonite because, those were the edgy people.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I guess they just convinced me that SJWs were like these cringy bedroom
Yeah.
feminist type of, just cringy people and just like soft people.
Hmm.
Um,
Special
so
snowflakes.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, remember when counterculture was actually had some bite to it, right? Like remember the goths of the 80s, remember even like grunge, punks, all that stuff, and now we just have these fucking snowflakes. Um, so what could be edgier than Nazis? So I was really into Nazis when
Oh.
I was around 16. But no, I don't know. I guess I didn't really have any deeply held convictions about
Mm.
far rightism. It was just more to troll, really, just a meme.
Yeah.
And then finally, when I found Destiny, I saw that, there's a way to be left wing and like be correct, actually have the facts because the people like
Yeah.
Sargon obviously don't, but they had convinced me that they did. So I saw that there was a way to be on the correct side of science and be left wing and be edgy as well. And
Yeah.
now here we are. Now I've gone full socialist apparently.
Like what part in moving like you also were like an ANCAP like 5 months ago.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. How could I forget? Yes, I guess it was kind of a radicalization of the whole edgy anti-SGW thing,
Mm.
where I was like, but even when I was a libertarian, I still had the kind of progressive views to an extent.
Mm.
So like I liked libertarianism because in my mind at least, it was a way to, have this kind of edgy thing, but kind of right wing edgy thing, but
Yeah.
also with like freedom to be whoever you want to be, freedom to I don't know, like have crazy hair and piercings and all that stuff, and like or be gay or be trans or whatever.
Mm.
Um, but then I started realizing that all the people around me, all my fellow libertarians and fellow ANCAPs, for some reason didn't really agree on that front, right? So yeah, they
Yeah.
started in all the libertarian groups that I was, they started talking about covenant communities or community covenants or whatever, which is basically just like I don't want the government to oppress people because I want to be the one oppressing people.
Yeah. Let's have private property do the oppressing. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that's the funny thing with like right libertarians. Like they're right about the oppressive role of the state, but they don't like expand that further to like how private interests can be oppressive, like big business or like kind of like cults or something. Like private enterprise and private groups can be even more oppressive sometimes than a state.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why they assume that everything is going to suddenly be, like small businesses and everything's going to work out. Like, and then they say, like, oh, it doesn't matter, like this argument that what if there is a mega corporation that oppresses everyone, and then they say, oh, but that doesn't matter because that's what the state does now. So it's like you're just saying that we should replace the bad thing we have now with another bad thing that is at least just as bad as what we have now.
Like there's no like serious critical analysis there.
Yeah. That's another thing as well that I think really separates the left from the right, where like it's not just a matter of different ideas about what society should be like, but it starts at very foundational, like philosophical levels of idealism versus materialism.
Yeah.
So I find it quite hard to argue against right-wingers sometimes because we disagree on like very basic things, and I don't even know how to like explain that to them. I'm not qualified for this.
Yeah, I found my conversations with right-wingers to be quite interesting. I found that typically, like, the kind of libertarian right is more open to what I'm saying than like the auth-right, like Trump supporters, like people who like believe that there's a conspiracy against whiteness, like that white people are the real victims, the real oppressed one, because you can make anti-white jokes but not anti-black jokes. I find that libertarians that eschew that kind of nonsense, I find those are the right-wingers I have the easiest time talking to. I have a policy on not talking to the alt-right.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why. Or rather, why is it? Like, I have my own reasons for not talking to the alt-right, but what are yours?
Well, like, it seems to me like very arrogant of me, because it would be like what I'm doing when I'm talking to the alt-right is saying, your political opinions are basically genocide of everyone that has, in your mind, impure blood, and extreme, like fascism. This is acceptable. This is open for debate, and I might even agree with you. It's so arrogant of me to put the lives of other people on the line, in this debate. Like, just having a debate about, should these people live or die? Should everyone have to be expelled from a country because of your feelings? Like, that's not something I feel like if I failed in the debate, then I would be advancing a genocidal ideology. And even if I succeeded in the debate, I would be potentially allowing someone to be convinced by a genocidal ideology. And that's not to say I won't make arguments against alt-right talking points, but I don't engage with them.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to draw, because one time I don't remember exactly what it was, but I saw someone saying that, oh, you should never debate fascists, you should never debate fascists. And I just jumped to the assumption that, oh, okay, so we're just gonna like punch them. But I failed to consider the option of, putting forth arguments against their points, but without actually engaging with them.
So what are your reasons for not debating the alt-right?
Oh, well, it's pretty much the same. I guess it's like, I don't want to lose the debate because that would obviously be very bad, and I don't think I actually have like the tools to perform well in such a debate, because it does require some level of knowledge about like genetics and stuff like that. I mean, it's not that easy to argue against them. Like, it might seem at face value that like they're obviously wrong, which they are, but the way that they construct the narrative is pretty fucking sneaky. So it does take some skill to really get in there. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
And I wouldn't want to run the risk of, losing the debate. I do think that winning debates, if possible, is good, but if you're not sure, then don't try.
Yeah, like the one debate I've seen with like kind of these alt-right types that I think went really well would be like David Sherratt's debate with Richard Spencer. I think he did an exceptional job at poking holes, and it was just it was funny seeing Richard Spencer like getting gradually more and more angry and more petulant as the debate went on. And
yeah, that takes some effort, because he's pretty good at like keeping the nice guy facade, right?
And that's actually another thing with the alt-right. They're so like, oh, I really hate like how slippery they are. Like, they're really dishonest people. They won't actually speak about what they really want to do unless they're really dumb. And Destiny gets a few of the really dumb ones on his onto debate a few times, but mostly they talk in like this coded language. So they won't say, I'm against the Jews. They'll say, well, I'm against, they won't say necessarily, like if they're being a bit less subtle, they'll say, I'm against the international Jewry. Or if they're being a bit even more subtle than that, they'll talk about like international finance, or they'll talk about the globalists or something like that. And instead of talking about white genocide, they'll say the Great Replacement. And they're really, really sneaky at, you know, on one hand, keeping the debate on something that doesn't necessarily seem as radical as it is, while on the other hand, signaling to their core audience that, yes, I'm on your side. What I'm advocating is fascism and it's genocidal, and you're going to get that blood that you want.
Yeah, and they managed to convince all the centrists or the classical liberals with that, which to me is just kind of insane, because I feel like these people have this idea that like they deal with things in very abstract terms. Like, for instance, Romy Millennial kept saying that, oh, I don't have the responsibility to like prevent people from leaving these types of fashy comments on my channel. I don't have the responsibility to ensure that they won't be swayed by Richard Spencer. But it's like, you do have the responsibility,
Yeah.
but even if you don't want to think about it like that, why would you not want to prevent people from supporting fascists if you are indeed anti-fascist, as she says she is? You know, she says she doesn't want an ethno state. So like, okay, then why aren't you helping us prevent that from happening?
Because I don't think she really sees it as a threat to what she wants. Like, on a lot of the surface level of fascist talking points, she agrees with them. It's on the more covert, you know, more radical agenda, which she may not. But in the end, they do have a similar sort of goal of like reinforcing this kind of Western supreme and keeping it preserved from all the, you know, all the evils of the world and keeping it pure. They have the same goal, not necessarily the same methods. And whiteness isn't necessarily something that roaming millennial might value as much as the alt-right.
Yeah, I guess it's like these conservative types, they might be well-intentioned on some level, but like the kind of society that they want, they have this cognitive dissonance where they don't want to accept that that kind of society can only be achieved through fucking with other people. It's kind of like my latest video about Hi, I Think I'm Real, where he has this very idealized version of capitalism, but he can't help but see all the problems with it. But you know, then he just tries to cling to this idea that no, there is all this oppression, there is all this poverty, but that's not bad, because you know, the vision I have for society couldn't possibly be bad. It couldn't possibly be predicated on making other people suffer.
It's the right is so heavily addicted to the just world fallacy. They so badly want to live in this world where everything's fair and everyone has the, you know, the same outcomes, and they fail to realize that the world we live in isn't fair. Like, it's so unfair, and it's so dispiriting to know that and to work with that. But it is reality, and you can't just run from reality because it's painful or because it's scary. You have to acknowledge the facts. Facts over feels.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess now, well, we've gone over all the sort of all the problems, I guess, with like the alt-right and conservatism, all that kind of stuff. I guess the only thing left is Trump, which is, you know, the most iconic manifestation of all those things that we have at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I find Trump to be very interesting, especially the reaction he brings out in different types of people. Like, a lot of people for the first time are like, oh my God, I didn't realize that society was so terrible and all these things existed. Like, it's all because of Trump. He made them happen. And no, like this was always happened. The thing that changed with Trump is presentation. Like Trump is a more honest version of the brutal systems in America.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, it's like liberals idolize Obama and then suddenly think Trump is literally Hitler, but like things have been,
Mm-hmm.
things are like America is America, no matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican that's running it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh, yeah, go on.
it's interesting you bring that up. Like the two-party system is so superficial. Like the parties have so much in common in terms of their interests. Where they really only differ is on kind of the social issues. Like when it comes to economics, both of them value like big bailouts for big business. Both of them value like deregulation. Both of them value tax cuts for the 1%, or not raising taxes to the level that it needs to be in order to pay for things. Both of them value huge increases in military spending and a activist role for America abroad. And it's funny how much Democrats and Republicans hate each other because they're very similar.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of just people being pitched against each other, like to prevent, the real revolution from happening. So we just focus
Yeah.
on these petty things. Speaking of which, how do we get the real revolution to happen, or should we even try to?
Yeah, and this is a very interesting conversation to have because, like, when it comes to the revolution, I see so many different attitudes and all these different ideas on how to get there. Like some people think that the best way to do it is just kind of like stick with democracy, stick with the party system. Eventually we'll get a guy and we'll kind of slowly move there. Other people have this kind of like, and this is like probably one of my biggest disagreements with the left, is this kind of leftist that seems to believe like a revolution a la 1917 is possible tomorrow in America.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess that would be the tabby types of people, right?
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, my biggest problem with the whole revolution thing is really that I can't see it happening, and it's like we can't. It's not even that we don't know what socialism would look like, but we
yeah.
can't really know because we're stuck with our capitalist mentality. So it's
Hmm.
like, how can you do a revolution tomorrow and not know what comes after? Like, I feel like something that includes such a change of mindset would have to be
Yeah.
gradual and like a cultural change, right? It would have to be
Hmm.
gradual, but at the same time, I don't know if I can see any politician, any like democratic politician in the way that we have now, um, going much further than just like welfare that's gonna
Yeah.
calm
And
people down, right, and just keep things as they are.
hmm that's a very good point. The way I think there probably will be some violence in the change from capitalism to socialism. I mean, there was some violence at the end of feudalism, but ultimately, what enabled feudalism to fall was when the feudal lords were deprived of their real power by the absolutist monarchies of the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. Only when the economic system of serfdom had no real bite behind it were alternative thoughts and alternative ideas on where to move forward possible. And only then was like the real kind of like angry revolution that we saw in France in 1789 and growing ever increasingly radical into like the mid 1790s. That was only possible when the feudal lords lost their power. And I don't like it would be interesting to see like how can capitalists be dethroned when they still have so much power and influence, like people like Jeff Bezos. Like it's just hard to understate the amount of power that one man has.
Yeah, so you know a lot of history, right? You know your history. So I can ask you, like, how exactly did the feudalism people lose their power?
They lost their power because it was abolished by the state, and because they had no, because they had lost the nation. The first and second estates were opposed by the vast majority of the country. Even members of their own estates joined the third estate and the new national council, because I think it was like maybe it was a national. And fiddling with terms here, I can't remember the exact name for the body, but it became so clear to everyone that these people who seem powerful were only paper tigers. I don't think that's the case with capitalists now. I think they do have very real power. I think that power might become a bit more illusionary if there was a stronger labor movement, if unions were more powerful across the world and could, like, as they did in like the 1920s, like shut down the economy with a general strike. I think then it would become, then we would kind of move into a case where, the capitalists would be deprived of their power, But right now, I don't see that happening because I don't see the momentum.
Right, the momentum. Precisely the name of the Corbyn.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good way to look at things, because it does give us like some hope and like something to do, because I feel like I don't know very much about Marxism, but what little I know of it gives me the impression that there are no like guidelines for what to do. It's just like when things get bad enough, the revolution is going to happen. But that's easy to say from the perspective of like a historian or like someone who studies sociology. But if you're an actual character in history, then what do you do, right? And I guess that's a good idea, to try to agitate with like a labor movement and make it like not just show the capitalists that they don't have as much power as they think, because strength and numbers, but actually make it so they don't have as much power as they think.
And also there needs to be a broader coalition. Like, labor is only one segment of, I think, of a successful revolution. Alliances also have to be formed with members from other marginalized groups, because right now on social media, these movements have like a lot of push. Like, there's a lot of push behind Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of push behind Me Too. Like, all these things, they may kind of start out with kind of like liberal reformist ideas, but I think if more radical people join these movements and convince the members of these movements that more action is needed, that there is wider systematic problems that can't be fixed with band-aids like police, like body cams. I think then you'll start to see a really powerful, broad coalition against capital.
I feel like if that happens, like I'm wondering if by the time that happens, the Overton window will be shifted more towards the left, where like everyone will be at least a liberal, or if we're actually going to have some conflict between like the far right and the far left.
Yeah, that's interesting, because right now it depends on where you are. Like, I see like in countries like England, I think it's the far left that has the momentum, pun intended. In countries like America and Canada, it could go either way. Like, we've seen, like, there was Doug Ford, unfortunately elected in my province, but he's not even like far right. He's just an idiot, kind of modeled after Trump. And I think the funny thing with the far right is that they're kind of and the right in general is they're kind of stuck with these idiots as their leaders, and they're these huge millstones around the power that their movements could have, having these blithering idiots who don't know what they're talking about and can't even string together a coherent sentence, trying to lead them to a different society. Like, that's going to discredit their movement more and more as time goes on. And even though they think they're gaining by like falling in behind Trump, I don't think they really are.
Well, I mean, eventually everyone who was attracted to Trump because they thought he was going to fix their problems, right? Like
Mhm.
kind of working class problems kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're going to realize that, he's not going to solve anything.
Yeah. And I think like already people are coming to that realization. I think already, like plenty of my friends that I know used to be Trump supporters before they saw like what a disastrous sellout he's been.
So where are they now? Where do they stand now?
Well, they're actually like some of them are like further left than me, like kind of left commie anarchist types. A few Marxist Leninists too.
But wait, so they went from Trump supporters to very far left?
Yeah,
Oh,
because the rhetoric of populism that Trump used, they found a more authentic embodiment of populism in the far left, rather than the kind of superficial populism of Donald Trump, where it's all talk and no walk.
mm-hmm. Well, that's good to know. Because I mean, everybody seems to realize that there's something wrong with the way things are now, right? Except the
Mm-hmm.
centrists,
Oh,
which in a way makes them even worse than fascists, right? Because they're
yeah,
just so oblivious. Um, but then outside of that, everyone realizes that there's something wrong. So
yeah.
I guess you. I mean, I would think that if you see something wrong and think the solution is fascism, then you're kind of lost. But I guess what you just said gives me hope that if somebody realizes the problems through the populist discourse of somebody like Trump, they might actually use that kind of base to actually go left.
Mm-hmm. And like in America, like there's broad support for social democracy, which, isn't, as left as you and I might like, being both of us socialists, but it is a start. Like America is, I think, unique among all the first world countries. It doesn't even have a proper social democratic base. Like it has like the beginnings of a welfare state, but it doesn't even have like universal health care. And I think there's a lot of like, especially among young people in the United States, there's a lot of anger against this decrepit establishment and these stupid parties that just fight back and forth over trivialities while people are dying in the streets. And I think that if social democracy doesn't come through, we might see a radicalization of those tendencies in the United States.
Yeah, the problem some would say is what if social democracy does come through, right? Because then
Mm.
everybody's just going to settle down and it's just going to be like Scandinavia where everything's fine, but it's not, kind of not, but it seems fine enough that nobody really cares.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing because the socialist parties in Norway aren't exactly weak. Like they get about like the far left in Norway got about 10% of the vote last election, and like the Communist Party got a seat for the first time in Norwegian history this election as well.
Huh. But do you know if it's because, well, do you know why? Like, what are people dissatisfied with?
Well, it seems weird because like any dissatisfaction in Norway is going to seem like trivial to us here, but in general, I think it's they see that there is, I think they kind of see beyond the veil of social democracy. Like social democracy promises, okay, we can have capitalism, but we can make it nice, we can make it capitalism with a smile, capitalism with a human heart. And I think more and more Norwegians are waking up to the fact that that's kind of an impossibility, that behind these measures that are designed to make capitalism seem nicer and all these like kind of redistributive policies, there's still that fundamental oppression, there's still that exploitation going on there.
Well, I'm glad you said that actually, because that kind of demolishes or destroys the argument that if we have like, well, if people have better living conditions, essentially, then, you know, the revolution's over. There's not going to be socialism. Everyone is just going to be.
Accelerationists.
Yeah, exactly.
Those people, they always seem to be people who are never going to be in the way of the wrecking ball.
True. It's always the privileged white males.
White male.
And I mean, it's like the whole point of socialism is to make people's lives better. So, you know, why would you make them worse in the process? It just seems counterintuitive.
I think it's because some people have like this really romanticized idea of what a revolution is going to be. And like they kind of like, they picture the guillotines, they picture the struggle and the tears and the sweat and the blood and the grime. And they've never actually experienced what a bloody revolution, a bloody and kind of like miserable period of social change is like. But they just imagine that it would be good. They kind of associate it with liberation, even though they've never experienced it. And so they dream about something that they've never experienced, and they probably never will experience. But in the meantime, because of their dreams, a lot of people's lives are going to get a whole lot worse.
Yeah, it's kind of like a view of politics that's just like dissociated from the real world. It's just like about the ideas, but not really about what they're going to be in practice and what or like how people are actually going to experience them, which leads me to the point: internet politics.
Oh, what a dumpster fire.
I mean, it's just about how like all the kind of infighting and all the kind of Twitter drama actually prevents us from achieving anything in the real world while we're so caught up in our, you know, like fetishized versions of our ideology, whatever it is.
And like, there's all these stupid sectarian arguments on left Twitter. Like they go on and on and on. They're like, this ideology is basically fascism. This ideology is basically fascism. You know, these people are opportunists or blah, blah, blah. And there never is any like constructive dialogue. It's just like this mudslinging an attempt to prove like who is the most pure, who is the most revolutionary among all of us. It's just, it's so, I don't even know. Like, I can't even articulate how much it like drains my energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people who should be agreeing at least on the end goal, and like we can discuss how to get there, but then people just start hating each other. I don't know if that happens on the right as much because, you know, sometimes people bring up all the kind of drama that goes on in the right, but I feel like because, you know, to be fair to the lefties, because the right isn't really concerned with ethics and principles, I feel like they're more likely to, you know, just get along among themselves and like get along with fascists, right? Whereas in the left, it's like, if I have a problem with you, it's probably because I feel like you're being unethical in some way.
Yeah, which it kind of goes both ways, because that means that their critique of you will be even more brutal and even more judgmental than you might see between a right winger disagreeing with another right winger, because the left winger will see the other left winger's opinion as like morally offensive, whereas the other right winger will just kind of see the other right wingers just kind of being like too weak.
Yeah, or it's going to be something to do with ego, right? Just like petty, ego-driven drama. That's not to say, though, that we don't have that on the left as well, because we definitely do. And it just drives me insane.
There's all these like stupid like personality dramas that you can never keep track of. Like, okay, when did this start? Well, it all went back to this text, but actually it was this person whose account's been deleted. And, you know, maybe it was more due to this person's thread. And like, oh my God, like you have to like spend days reading through this stuff, and all this time that could have been spent advocating for the revolution, talking to people who, you know, are maybe on the fence, you know, putting forward the, you know, the facts of our desperate situation is just wasted on this pointless mudslinging.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like a lot of people on the left don't actually like politics in the sense of this kind of spectacle thing that liberal democracy is, right? You'd rather just like be real, be honest, and just like get everyone together because we do have the same goals and just go for the revolution or whatever. But in practice, a lot of people just get so caught up in this kind of high school-esque drama.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm kind of stepping on eggshells because it's like, oh, if I get in an argument with this person because I just like have a disagreement with them, then they're going to be friends with this person who's friends with me, and then they're not going to like me anymore because they have this alliance with the person that I had an argument with. And it's like, oh my God.
There is like kind of these divisions, and I think there's definitely the biggest division is between like the Marxist left and like the more anarchist left.
I'm not too I'm not far down into the rabbit hole enough to be quite there yet.
Yeah.
To be familiar with that kind of divide.
And the other big divide is between kind of like the sex negative, like pornography is evil, like transgender ideology is patriarchal group of leftists, and the sex positive, pro trans kind of left. And I think that those are the two big divides in left wing thought, and you do see them kind of going back and forth. And it's just such a like annoying, pointless exercise, and it just kind of makes me want to tear my eyes away sometimes. But even I've been dragged into like this sort of drama before. Like, I'm not like some sort of saint. Like, I got pretty seriously involved in drama. Actually, I got called a pedophile.
Yeah, I remember that story. That wasn't very fun.
Because the thing with it was that I said that having an 18 plus account that's not private and that doesn't go out of like isn't pedophilia, and due to that I was called a pedophile and a creep by an older woman. It was so weird, and then they blocked me, and yeah, thankfully that account got deleted, but now they're back, and it's just a whole thing, and I just kind of want to get over it. But a drama maybe that is more pertinent to you would be the whole ace exclusion thing.
Yeah, I was about to get into that. I was going to say that I don't understand like swerfs and turfs and the like, because it's like, how can you be a feminist or advocate for a certain minority while excluding other minorities? But yeah, so Pride Month is going on right now, and it has not been very enjoyable for me at all. I was actually excited about it because it was like my first Pride Month actually involved in, I guess, progressive activism kind of thing.
Yeah.
But turns out I was just met with like a wave of asexual exclusionists on
Twitter. Like, honestly. And then there's like the bisexual exclusionists and the trans exclusionists, and it seems like they pipe down throughout the rest of the year, but during Pride, like something in them breaks and they feel the need to spew their garbage online.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just like the kind of bigoted right-wingers, right? During Pride, they just have to, they can't stand people being proud. They have to make them ashamed again.
And of course, it's not because they're homophobes. No one could be a homophobe. It's because of the gay agenda. Like, I'm fine with actual gay people, but there's the agenda, and that's the problem.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't make any sense. But what makes even less sense, I think, is like, what are the LGBT people concerned with, right? Because it's not even just asexuals, like you said. It's bisexuals. It's sometimes trans people, sometimes like gay people of different races. There's all sorts of exclusion going on in the LGBT community, and it's like, what are you hoping to achieve with that?
I think it's because, in some ways, like these people who feel like their movement is being invaded by like cis hets, they see the cisheads as even worse than the homophobe might see the gay people, because for the homophobe, the gay person is just kind of grouped in with like this vague idea of degeneracy and degenerates. Not really, it doesn't really, there's not a distinguished like hate for any particular one of them. It's just kind of a general contempt for anything outside the norm. When it comes with these people who are gatekeepers, these ace exclusionists, they see these people entering them as, not only privileged oppressors, but even worse, because they're deceptively trying to claim victim status in order to get, validation and encouragement that they don't think that the oppressors deserve. And so that makes them filled with so much rage and so much more hate than you could possibly ever find with a homophobe.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like infighting between different minorities and not realizing that if we just, got along, we could liberate everyone. But it's also, it kind of makes me feel like bad in a way, because yes, it's due to ignorance and misconceptions and not getting yourself educated, which we tell the right-wingers to do all the time, but people in our circles could use a bit of that as well. But also it's, like you can't really blame them for distrusting people if they've been oppressed all their lives,
Yeah, very understandable. But the problem comes when you fail to sympathize with the struggles that other people are going to. You just immediately assume that because they don't share your experience, they must be privileged. Like this whole doctrine around like ace people don't face hatred like gay people do. They're not killed for their sexuality, which is just, obvious bullshit. Like if you actually look it up, you can see like this huge swath of anti-ace bigotry throughout society and this demand for sexuality. And, that's just not acknowledged. It's glossed over because it doesn't suit the narrative.
Yeah, it's actually reminiscent of right-wing rhetoric as well, where it's like Sargon saying, where is the law that prevents women or black people from, getting a job or getting rich or whatever? It's like, where are the people killing asexuals? Like, did you know that sometimes problems can just be cultural or societal? It doesn't really have to be, like explicit or like legal or actually involving physical violence, though sometimes it does. I mean, correction, rape is a thing among the asexual community. Well, not among it, but like it happens to asexuals.
Yeah.
But even, even without that, just a sort of cultural thing, like I said, is a problem.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, I just don't know how to like reach these people. Like, how do we make them see that people like you are not, or even people like me sometimes, are not privileged oppressors? How do we make them empathize with our struggles when they're already viewing us with such a lens of fear and hate?
Well, yeah, I guess it might help to, actually explain the kind of discrimination that we face and hope that they see themselves in that, like relate to the kind of discrimination that we face, like see it as similar to what they face. But also, as you said, it's based on fear. So, well, as I said, I feel like there's a bit of an accountability problem there, where it's like, yeah, we do have to do something about it, but I think we have to be careful because, we're not really dealing with right-wingers who are bigoted just because they're privileged or whatever, but we're actually dealing with people who might be acting in unacceptable ways, but because they have been the target of something bad themselves. It kind of reminds me of Contra's Tiffany video, right, where Tiffany is a dick to other trans people, and that's obviously not acceptable, but she has her own struggles with being trans that are caused by like cis heteronormative society.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, like maybe a way to get through them would be like to show them like like they're picking fights with the wrong people. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like evil ace people are going out and killing gay people. Like, that doesn't really happen. It's more, you know, these bigoted straight people who just kind of see everything that's different from them as like this dark mass, this dark cloud that they don't understand, and it's often very frightening and intimidating them. Sometimes because they're dealing with their own feelings, their own thoughts of, you know, possibly being gay themselves, and that for them is a very stressful and terrifying experience as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that the takeaway from everything we've talked about
Yeah.
is that, you know, people do have legitimate concerns and like legitimate things to be angry about, but often that anger is directed towards the wrong
Yeah.
thing, and not just wrong as in like morally wrong or whatever, but you know, it's directed at something that isn't actually the cause of their problems. And
Yeah.
so being angry at the wrong thing is going to be counterproductive because it's not going to solve your problems. And then our challenge is to fight against all this world of right-wing propaganda that's very well funded and try to you know, push that anger towards the right goals.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But I think it's interesting how this and then like, I don't know. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. But how do we help people who are victims of this gatekeeping culture? Because we've been talking a lot about how can we help the gatekeepers realize the humanity of ace people and help move them towards a more inclusive mentality. How do we help ace people who are right now being victims of this bigotry?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Tell me if you find out. I would like to be helped. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like this might be a bad thing, but I feel like I have a mentality that's too focused on the oppressors because like those are the people whose minds we have to change.
Mm.
But we have to change their minds because we want to serve the interests of the oppressed, right? So
Yeah.
maybe I'm being, I don't know, maybe that's not the best way to look at things, but I don't know. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess I would say that we need people concerned with both sides of things, right? But my
Yeah.
focus is mostly on the oppressor kind of thing because I'm pretty fucking privileged. Outside of being asexual, I'm just like a financially privileged white girl, you know.
Financially privileged.
Yeah.
What are you, some sort of banker?
Maybe.
Yeah. Like, I don't really consider myself oppressed. Like, I mean, I may be trans, I may be like pansexual, you know, I may be a woman, but like, I don't really think of myself as like on the like anywhere near the bottom of the pole. Like, I come from like, you know, my family is decently well off. Like, I'm not struggling. And so sometimes it can be difficult for me, like dealing with people who are like even more, you know, who have all these experiences with the actual, you know, systems that I'm talking about, and dealing with how their approach might differ from mine.
But do you like actually have real life contact with these people? Because I feel like I mean, it's kind of my fault, but I feel like I'm completely trapped in my own bubble of either, you know, interacting with other people who are like on the same social level as me in real life, but mostly just really like staying home on the computer all day and just talking to other people online. So I feel like yeah, the kind it's weird because it's like the kind of people that we're ultimately trying to help the most, they just feel so distant, at least for me.
Mm. Well, I definitely have conversations with tons of people from all sorts of different backgrounds. You know, I talk to like tons of people who are financially struggling and desperate, or, you know, sometimes people who are living at home but also living in a precarious situation because of their gender. I talk to people who may be more who may be more like me who don't necessarily have to worry as much about. And then I also have like tons of liberal and right-wing friends. Like all my friends in real life are liberals. Like I have maybe one far left acquaintance, and that's it. It's online where I like mostly talk to the far left. Aside from that, like it's just I'll see people at a rally every now and then. I'm like, oh hey, it's you. But as it comes to like real like radicals, I don't really know that many in real life. And like, and then there's like I know like quite a few right-wing people, both in this, both in like the physical life and online. Like I travel in a lot of like more right-leaning circles as well, and I do have to put up with a lot of nonsense about like trans being a mental illness, and hashtag only two.
Yeah. I guess it's that's another problem. It's having to deal with these things where it's like you can't, we're talking about kind of outreach and all that kind of stuff and like changing people's minds, but it's like you have to also sympathize with the people who aren't able to do that. It's like it's kind of weird to demand that someone go and actually interact with people who maybe they don't even hate them, but they just have this kind of ignorance that hurts on
Yeah.
a level that it shouldn't even be up for debate. It's just like a fundamental human right, and it's like it's not hurting anyone. It's just so stupid, and then you have to demand that people go and do that because that's the only thing that we can do, like punching fascists or punching everyone who is being a fucking idiot. We don't really have
Yeah.
that option. It's just
Yeah.
not going to work.
Like every now and then, like people punch fascists, but like sometimes I feel like on left Twitter, like they think that everyone who doesn't think exactly like them is a fascist. I'm like, okay, if you think that, then there's only like 30,000 people on Earth who think like you. Do you really want to punch everyone else? Like, are you never going to have a conversation with anyone else? Like, on some respect, I think that I have to have these unpleasant conversations with these right wingers because it's advancing a cause, and I can, even if I don't necessarily reach the person I'm debating, I reach some members of their audience and help maybe orient them more in my direction, or I convince people who are more on the center to come more to the left, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to do that. Yeah, and I guess I would try to encourage more people to do that. I guess it's just well, it's kind of both sides kind of thing where it's very good when people do it, but when people don't want to do it, I kind of understand that as well. And I mean, I'm saying this because I kind of sometimes I struggle with that where I want to like I struggle with that in both ways where like I see someone like being getting angry and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You're fucking our optics.
Yeah.
But also on the other hand, sometimes I find myself getting angry at people and I'm like, oh fuck this, fuck optics, I'm just gonna get angry because
Yeah.
this person is making me angry and I know that I'm the one in the right, so what the fuck.
Or maybe the one in the left.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think this is a good, a good place to transition to a talk about internet hate mobs and call out culture. Like, how do you think? Like, do you think that the left is a call out culture?
I mean, I don't know if I've been around long enough to really get a feel of that, but I do know that in what little time I've spent around, like the group chats and all that stuff. Yeah, there has been some kind of weird stuff, like instances where I'm not even going to name names because, oh my God, I really hope that thing dies. I think now it has, thankfully. I don't want to see anybody talking about that incident ever again. But I think to begin with, the person who called out someone else, they really could have done it privately. Like, there was no reason to start that fire in the first place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if it's a call out culture, but I think that people probably could use a little bit more, I guess, just being like cool-minded, right? Because I can understand in the heat of the moment, you're like, how could this person say that? I have to tweet about this. But
Yeah.
just like, take a moment to consider every option that you have, like whether it's best to just contact them in private.
Yeah. I think definitely it like if you know the person, then I think you should contact them in private. I think doing that and like having a decent relationship with the person and knowing that you could probably convince them of your perspective if you talked about it privately, instead choosing to do it on a public forum and out them in front of hundreds of people, like, what are you thinking? Like, where is this going to go?
Yeah, it just creates the kind of interpersonal drama we were talking about, and it doesn't really get anywhere, because at that point it's no longer about whatever ideological disagreements you might have had in the first place, right? When you
Yeah.
expose them and make them vulnerable in that way, it becomes about ego, both of the person who was exposed and the person who did the exposing, because now they have to defend themselves and defend their honor. And the whole point of the thing was this ideological disagreement, but you just like you just like erase that, and the conversation becomes something else that's completely counterproductive.
Yeah, it becomes, why did you do this to me? Or like,
Yeah.
how could you do this? And then it starts to become into like a mudslinging match between the different fan bases of the people who are getting involved. And it just turns into a disaster.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been going for an hour, and I think we've talked about everything we set out to talk about. So, is there anything else you want to bring up, or just like final thoughts? Or I mean, if you want to go on longer.
Yeah. Oh, I obviously, like, I do want to go on longer because I always love talking with you, Maria. But
Thank you.
What I did want to say was more on the call out culture. I think, though, there is a problem when it comes to someone you don't necessarily know, like, at all, and you see them doing something that's really heinous, but you don't necessarily think that they're a terrible person. I think that is one of the, like, that gets handled the worst on left Twitter. People just immediately turn it into the worst denunciation, like, you're a bigot, you're terrible, all immediately making all sorts of terrible assumptions about the person. And there's never any time for moderation. And I was actually, I don't know, maybe it was just like how nice this person was, but, and maybe it was just kind of the way I phrased the call out. But I think what you have to do when phrasing a call out to a person you don't know is to first not attack them, but attack what they did. Like, go after, like, this I think is like a really bad thing to do, and here's why, as opposed to, you're really bad for having done this thing that I dislike.
Well, yeah, and if it's on like you're talking like online, right? So if it's like on Twitter, you can always check that profile and see, if they're actually a bigot, or if it was just like some kind of faux pas or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Because everyone has moments where they like slip up and they say something stupid. Like, it's unreasonable to expect that everyone be perfect, feminist, socialist all the time and completely say everything that agrees and falls, that's acceptable to every point in both of those very vast ideologies.
Yeah, and no one was born a feminist or a socialist or anything. Like,
Yeah.
even if that's always been your political position, you still had to, like grow into it and learn more, which is something else that kind of annoys me when, like, if somebody is a right winger, not even a fascist, but just a right winger, I think it's okay to like be mean to them. But if someone has some interest in progressivism in general, even if they're just a liberal, I think that you should call them out, but in a tone of encouragement to learn more, or like, oh, so you do value progressivism, so maybe you would like to rethink some of the things you're saying, right? To be more in tune with your own values. But sometimes people, just end up alienating them when they're actually, trying to learn more, or if they
Yeah.
like there was a good chance that we would manage to convert them, but then for some reason you have to turn them away.
Mm-hmm. And like sometimes it seems like that's the goal in a weird way. Like the goal isn't to spread leftism, it's to maintain the purity of leftism. It's not to achieve anything, it's to keep the beliefs pure and unfiltered with wrong thinkers.
Yeah, that happens with all the sects also, right? Like
Yeah.
Maoism, Marxism, anarchism, breadism, or whatever.
Breadism? Are you a Marxist breadist, Maria?
Have you read the bread book?
Have
There's
you
actually an
taken bread
entire site dedicated to the bread book. It's actually called the bread book. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
And they have like the actual text of the book, and a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. I think they actually have merch. I'm not sure if
Mm.
it's merch or if it's just like a bread meme. But
A bread
anyway,
me. I should read the bread book and Kropotkin in general. I feel like my politics have mostly been just like reading like socialists and maybe like libertarian socialists, but still socialists, and with liberals and conservatives thrown in. I haven't really engaged as deeply as I should have with the Marxist, Leninist, Hoxieist, whateverist, and the anarchists.
But you seem to have read a lot. That's another thing that I think kind of drives people away from the left, because we do have in general a culture where people don't want to read. People just
Yeah.
want to watch like 5-minute PragerU videos.
Yeah.
And, it would be great if people read. Like I do try to make the effort. But at the same time, it doesn't really help us to just shame people for not reading, right? If we could take
Yeah.
that time and energy and spend it towards creating the Marx U YouTube channel with 5 minutes of videos, that would be great.
Isn't that like Zexaphysi though?
Yeah, it is kind of, but I mean, it's like I don't blame him, because I imagine that. I mean, I haven't even watched that video because he did with Sonia an actual joke. They did, I think it was labor theory of value in minutes, but it's in 22 minutes. Um, so like I don't blame them, because I imagine that would be like such a complex topic, right? So,
Yeah.
if you can condense it down to 20 minutes, that's already great.
Mm-hmm.
But, 20 minutes is still kind of a long time for a YouTube video.
Yeah. And I think that you're right. There is this culture of like elitist academicism inside the left where it's like, well, you've read Marx, but have you read Engels? Okay, you've read Lenin, but have you read Trotsky and Stalin and Mao and Hoxie? Okay,
Yeah.
you've read Kropotkin, but have you read Chomsky? Okay, you've read Chomsky, but have you read Judith Butler? And anyway, don't try to read Judith Butler unless you want to make your mind explode. I wouldn't just don't read Judith Butler. It's just impenetrable. I tried and it's impenetrable. I think I'll try again, but because the ideas seem good. But if you're not a reader and you don't like, and if you're not the kind of like masochistic reader that adores like abusing the thesaurus, don't read Judith Butler.
I see you have some beef with Judith Butler.
Oh, she's an okay person. It's just the book of hers I tried to read was just impenetrable, like just completely like highfalutin academic language that no one who hasn't taken like 12 years in sociology will be able to grasp. And even then.
I mean, it's kind of funny because, the left is supposed to be like the movement of the people, but at the same
Yeah.
time, there's this kind of contempt for like dumbing things down. It's not really
Yeah.
dumbing things down, but it's perceived as such, right?
Yeah.
Like ContraPoints is revisionist or whatever.
Oh my God. Like there does seem to be that culture of purity as well. Like, okay, you may be one of our best advocates, but you're not really a leftist because you didn't do exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Or, like you sort of like made fun of it, like made a mockery of my pure ideals of leftism. But you know that's what works, so that's what we have to do.
Yeah, like you have to be able to laugh at yourself. I think that I have segments of the left that takes itself like way too seriously, and it's like never allows itself to be laughed at or criticized. And it's always like, no, these are the true pure ideas of the people. You're attacking the revolution if you dare laugh at my thoughts.
Yeah, like it's the age of memes, you know, you either become a meme or you just erased from everything.
Yeah. And I also think that like I think it's good if people read, because the more you read, the more you understand the world. That's really important. However, I think it's unreasonable to judge people for being lazy and not wanting to read.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, like speaking of meme, there is that meme that says like you can't just read the memes, right? At some point you have to read the theory or something like that. I've seen that on Twitter and I thought it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very valid as well. I guess just maybe as an entry point, these kind of, because like when when I was on cap, I had this thing where I would go to like some leftist and I would be like, okay, convince me to be a Marxist in 5 minutes. If you can't do it in 5 minutes, then I'm gonna keep on being on cap and you're not gonna get the revolution that you want.
Oh
Like
my
it's on
God.
you.
Oh my
Like it's
God.
on you to convince me.
Maria. That just like, I don't know, like I found it so funny how like dramatically you've changed in like 5 months. Like what made you want to become a leftist? Like what made you move from like moaning on about the nap 5 months ago to being bread pilled?
Um, it's like I feel like I've always had kind of the seed of leftism inside me somewhere, I
Yeah,
guess.
the
Um,
seed.
seed. Um, but then I had like this weird right wing phase. Like the other day, I was saying, I don't know how the fuck I was ever a right winger. Um, because I've always had like these progressive kind of ideas of not just of like being whoever you want to be, but also of kind of leaving society behind. But I guess it was a very liberal thing. Like, you know, you just have
Yeah.
to open your mind, follow your dreams, and you can just like escape capitalism and go live in a forest and be a hippie. But I didn't realize that, you know, a lot of people don't have that option. And I only have that option because I'm very benefited by this system that we live in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I've always had those kind of ideas, but then I had to be edgy. I had to be edgy. I had to be edgy. So I ended up being right wing. But then, like I said before, when I realized that you could be edgy and not be right wing, it just clicked really fast for me. Like when I saw Destiny talking about how he would always like base his arguments on, you know, like actual data. Like whenever he had some kind of question or wanted to form an opinion on something, he would go on like Google Scholar and look at what the experts were saying about it. I wasn't doing that before, but when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, obviously this is the thing to do. But for
Yeah.
some reason, I had spent so long not doing that. I don't know, it just felt like a relief, really. I guess I felt like I had to be something that I wasn't. Like I was kind of in conflict when I was right wing because it's like I don't want to be a cringy person like Milo Stewart, um, which I don't think he's they're cringy now anymore, but at the time. Um,
Yeah.
but I also feel like I'm kind of being kind of intellectually dishonest, you know, because I would engage in motivated reasoning all the time. And I was kind of like, you know, but if all the mainstream media is saying something different, then maybe they're right. But no, never mind that. Just stay in the echo chamber. So yeah, I guess that was just like a huge mistake. So I guess I changed so fast because it was a way to really get in touch with who I really was, I guess, as cringy as that sounds.
And like I've noticed that you've like moved like further left like pretty rapidly. Like at first it was just, oh, okay, I'm a liberal now. Then you became a social democrat, and now you're a socialist. Like, where will this end, Maria? Are you just going to turn into asexual Stalin?
Can you imagine? I don't even know. Like, I'm trying to, because I've thought about the whole right to left thing a lot. Because it's kind of weird to me as well. It's like, how did that happen? So I've actually stopped to think about how that happened. But with going from like liberal to socialist, I don't even know. I guess I was kind of scared of communism or socialism, and then I just stopped being scared because I started interacting more with leftists on Twitter, and I realized that their ideas are just like the logical conclusion of the values that would lead someone to be a social democrat.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to be scared about.
And did like the community of social democracy on Twitter like have anything to do with your conversion?
Oh, no. You mean like away from social democracy? Like, oh yeah, they were horrible to me. They bullied me. So then I had to change my ideology based on that,
Yeah, like, why did you leave the center left?
No, but I guess I don't even know if there is like a social democrat community on Twitter, because it feels like, I mean, at the same time that there's all this crazy infighting, it kind of feels like all the leftists are on the same side. I guess the good leftists are on the same side. The people who don't really engage in so much problematic behavior, or like they do as well. But I don't know. There's just some leftists on Twitter that get along fine, and that includes both socialists and social democrats. And I guess that was the crowd that I was closer to. So maybe that actually helped, because I was a social democrat, but I was around all these nice commies, so that made things easier.
Yeah. And then like, how do you feel like, are you just happy leaving the necrophilia thing behind, or do you think you're ever going to go back to it? Because you were the one voice, like, out of everyone on left Twitter and on YouTube that actually was like, wait a minute, maybe the left should be pro necrophilia.
Yeah. So as you pointed out to me a few weeks ago, this whole thing kind of started, or at least I got involved in this whole thing because I saw your argument with Sockdem Raven.
The late Sockdem Raven.
So actually, I guess this is like a strong disagreement that I have with you. We should debate sometime. But like, I'm actually trying to leave this behind, because at first I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna be edgy. Can you tell that I have this problem with wanting to be edgy all the time? I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be the edgiest person you've ever seen. I'm gonna be the Amos Yee of necrophilia. I'm gonna make like a career out of debating people on necrophilia. So like at first it was really fun, but after a while it felt like, I had already like made the same points a million times to people in the comments and stuff like that. And after a while I was just like, I don't really care that much about this. Like, it was fun, but like, it's not the pressing issue of our time. But so then I made a second video to try to just like end the discussion, and that was fine. That was working until I got featured in the 3 Arrows video. And, that was very, very good, because it got me from 682 subscribers to 1,000, which I'm very happy about.
1,000!
Yay! But then, like, a lot of newcomers were like, oh my god, it's the necrophilia chick. And they were, just like shocked, and they had to say something about it and kind of rekindle the discussion. And I was kind of like, why did you do that? But yeah, I think it's just gonna die down in the next few days or weeks, and I don't really want to get back to it. I don't want to make a career out of it anymore.
Yeah, I was debating doing a response video to your necrophilia thing because, like, originally that caused me to unsubscribe from you for a bit. I was that person that was, like, sadly unsubscribed.
Oh, wait, was it you that actually left that comment?
Yes, on my alt, I left that comment because I had been following you not on my YouTube channel, but on my my alt, my private one,
Oh,
and I was just like, oh God, like, is this really, like, this is what you want to waste your time with? Fine, I'm not going to stick around. Um, but then I changed my mind when I became friends with you on Twitter. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll resubscribe to her with my real channel, my other one this time.
oh, I'm glad you changed your mind. Because yeah, that's definitely not what I want to do, you know. It was just like a passing fad, really.
Yeah.
But if you wanna debate right now, we can do that.
Oh,
I'm joking, but I mean, I guess like
are
I
you
don't want.
challenging me to eat blood sports, Maria?
I am blood sports. But it's like I don't really want you to make a response video because, like I said, I
Yeah.
don't want that to go on. But I'm actually
Mhm.
curious what you'd have to say.
Yeah, honestly, I'm thinking of shifting my focus more towards, like, responding to the stuff on Hi, I Think I'm Real stream, specifically the whole um, what was her name? August Ames, that porn
Yeah,
star.
the porn star, yeah.
Oh, because that's just, like, I thought that had died down, but, like, the right wingers are still beating that tired old drum, and that whole yeah, I just, like, it's been bothering me for so long, and I think I'm going to make a response video to that.
Well, the whole problem with that stream, like I'm gonna talk behind Real's back because whatever. I can just link him the stream later. But the problem I have with that stream is that like there isn't a theme. Sometimes there is a set theme, but even when there is a set theme, we don't know that beforehand. So
Yeah,
we can't really look into the stuff that we're going to talk about. So it just ends up being like anecdotes and things that people come up with on the spot, which, it's not even necessarily their fault. Like I myself, I'm pretty sure I've said stuff that, I wouldn't have said if I'd actually looked into what I was talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a bad format to discuss politics like on
Hmm.
the spot right there because you're
Yeah.
inevitably gonna say stupid stuff.
Like, it is just, like, it's so off the cuff, and it's just like responding to random comments people leave in the chat, and then people respond about that half-heartedly for about 3 minutes or so and move on to the next topic, kind of drifting around aimlessly without putting any thought into the issues they're talking about.
Yeah, and after that, it was like, oh, should sex workers be forced to, take whatever client it is? Because, how does that compare to the cake case? And it's like the cake case is pretty fucking complex. And then you're
Yeah.
going to bring into it sex work, which is a whole nother discussion. And, it's just all these like really complicated things. And you just want to talk about that out of nowhere in like the 5 minutes that we have left before we have to kill the stream.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that was a big part of my transformation as well. Because I forgot to mention this when I was going over my political journey, but I actually was a Sargonite as well for like 5 months or so, back in like 2016, early 2017. And what really eventually like wore me out is because I was kind of attracted to like the faux academic personality of Sargon. Like, he just kind of seemed to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then, like, when you really start to look more deeply at these things, as I started to do, you begin to realize like just how many cracks there is in his belief system, like huge, like massive seismic cracks in the way he's thinking about the world. And that's what really like started to push me more towards feminism, more towards leftism, is just kind of the lack of rigor in the debate on the right. Like, it's like half the times it just devolves into a screaming match as opposed to like bringing any relevant facts forward.
Yeah, it's literally, they just go all out on the fields and completely forget about the facts. But I think that like now some people seem to be realizing that more and more, because people are just tired of this drama in the right. So,
Yeah.
they kind of realize that, oh, these people are just like, they just scream at each other for super chat money and they don't actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I have a friend, I mean, this is purely anecdotal. It's just like my friend that I know that had that kind of problem, where he doesn't really like Sargon all that much anymore, but
Mm.
he hasn't got away from anything that Sargon says or anything that he
Mm.
promotes. So it's like
Yeah.
I don't really like him anymore because I don't like his personality. But I still watch his videos because I still agree with what he's saying,
Hmm.
and I don't know.
Yeah, and like I think that if people engage with more rigor about the opposing sides of the argument, I think the what Sargon says quickly falls apart. And it's especially telling because of how bad Sargon is at debating. Like, um, if you can be beaten in a debate by Richard Spencer and the alt-right, then I'm sorry, I don't know what to say to you. Like, that takes a certain level of feebleness. And it wasn't just that Sargon was beaten; he made a complete fool of himself on that debate. I watched and I just felt like my heart sinking as he did it. It was like, really, this is the person that they're getting to represent the counterpoint, the alt right, the movement in society that doesn't want a genocidal fascism to take over. And like it was just all like so emotional and so arrogant and so smug. And meanwhile, he's being like attacked on all sides by like three different fascists repeating the same thing over and over and over again and poking holes in his obviously terrible argument. Like Sargon was so bad in that debate, on the first debate on the Andy Worski stream, that I actually found myself agreeing with Richard Spencer more often. Like I've never been a fascist. I've never sympathized with anything about fascism, but some of the things that Sargon was saying and some of the defenses he were using were just so dumb.
Yeah, and if he can do that to you, who's like obviously like a strongly opinionated leftist, imagine what the debate might have done to people who weren't so sure of themselves.
Yeah.
But I just realized that I kind of said the opposite of what I meant, where like, yeah, if people were willing to actually accept that Sargon and all those people don't know what they're talking about and have no intellectual or academic rigor, then yeah, they would be immediately swayed to the other side. But the problem is
Yeah.
that there is this emotional attachment to,
Mm-hmm.
I think, right-wing figures or just values. Because like I tell people all the time that the only reason why I could be a leftist is that I started doing therapy. And it's true because like before that, I wasn't really willing to really take a critical look at myself and do all this kind of introspection to, see like, why do I like this thing? Why am I behaving in this way? Why do I have this value that I have? Because I feel like people get very attached to these pretty notions of free will and, like you said, the just world
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. So it seems like just intellectual stuff isn't going to be enough to convince them
Mm-hmm.
out of that, which is very ironic because they're the ones peddling the
Yeah.
idea that we're all perfectly rational. You
Mm-hmm.
can just free marketplace of ideas and all that kind of stuff.
Facts over feels. Yeah, it is funny to me how emotional right-wing politics really is, how deeply rooted it is in, just kind of providing like hugs and comfortable thoughts, rather than challenging critical thoughts that might actually be unpleasant but are often true. Like the whole idea that, if people succeed, it's because they worked hard. Like so many people still believe that. It's unbelievable when you look at the like pretty damning evidence, and you like how can you still believe that? And the only thing I can come up with is because it's good to believe that. It makes them feel like the world is fair.
Yeah, and it's comfortable, right? You don't have to question anything that you're doing. I mean, another part of my political transition was, I mean, it could probably be described in some way as like the 5 stages of grief kind of meme. I should probably make a meme about that. But one of the parts was that I was like very angsty about everything that I was, because I was like I said, I'm financially privileged. So I was like, what do I do with that? Like, should I just like eat myself before the revolutionaries come and eat me because I'm rich?
No.
And I was like, I'm into like only white men. So I was like, oh my God, I'm a tool of white supremacy. Like, what do I do with that? And I still kind of think those things, but now I'm more like okay with the fact that, I am against this system, this whole system of capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also a product of it. Like, I can't really escape the influence that it's had on my like formation as a human being. So that was something that was really hard to go through, and I guess it takes a lot of willpower. Like, not really don't mean to brag, but like, I can see why a lot of people wouldn't be willing to put themselves through that.
Yeah, of like this kind of like ruthless self-critique. It is kind of like it is hard. It is hard, but I honestly, like, since I become the leftist and like embrace myself for who I am as a trans woman, I've felt 7 years, because it feels good to not live a lie. Like, even if the truth is painful, it's still the truth.
Yeah, I definitely, that's something that I really like to live by as a Sagittarius. What's your star sign, just out of curiosity?
I am a Gemini.
Oh, I see. So it makes sense that you would like read so much about so many different things, know your history, know your socialism memes.
Yeah. I don't really follow astrology that much. Do you?
Yeah. No, not really. I just I don't know, it's just fun, but I'm not that much into it. So I guess on this note, this is a good note to end the stream that was largely about pushing facts over feelings, and how the right is actually all about the feels. But we talk about astrology, but we're still correct on everything else.
Yeah. Oh, it's been fun, Maria. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, we probably should. I mean, I don't know if I think I didn't do too bad for my first stream. I hope.
Oh, I think you did wonderfully. Although I think there will be some people who will eventually want to see your wonderful face.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to think what I'm going to do to celebrate 1K, if I'm going to do like a Q&A or a face review, or, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll save the face review for like 100K or maybe 1 million.
Oh, Maria, you're greedy.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, it's been fun talking. Yeah, we should definitely do it again. Thanks to everyone who stopped by to, make me feel validated, because if there were no one watching, I would feel really bad. I hope you all enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, bye guys.